Chapter 6 Losing Faith in the Republic. By now, Dooku had become one of the leading names in the entire Order and quite possibly one of the strongest Jedi. The Council trusted him and Jedi Master Mace Windu on a mission to recover the corpse of a fallen Jedi Council member, Jedi Master Katri, who had been killed in an ambush on Raxus Secundus. He was no longer a young man by any means, and he had already served the Jedi Order for decades. But age didn't dull his eyesight toward the injustices and corruption of the Republic. Dooku, however, remained loyal to the Jedi Order until the events of this mission. And throughout his time working with Windu, he had doubts about the circumstances surrounding Katri's death. Senator Lyric had stood with Katri during the ambush and had survived. Dooku questioned how a politician lived while a Jedi Master fell. They landed on Raxus Secundus and met Lyric. He said he had been present when the attack began. Dooku pressed him for a complete account, but the senator hesitated and shifted details. Windu noticed the same gaps and favored alerting the council. Still, Dooku insisted on acting at once. At the scene, they examined the circumstances and concluded that multiple attackers had been present, but Lyric's shuttle showed no blaster scars. The contradiction hardened Dooku's doubts, forcing him to demand the truth from the senator by force. Lyric panicked and admitted that his guards had killed the Jedi Master, and before he could say more, a blaster bolt killed the senator. The guards and their droids opened fire as Dooku and Windu fought back, beating them quite easily. The last fighter sank to his knees and gave his name as Simich. He confessed to the killing, saying they had learned that Lyric used his Senate seat to enrich himself while Raxus was carved into contracts. They only kept Lyric alive to force him to speak for their reforms at the next Senate session. Windu asked why Simich had not shown Katri the evidence. Simich answered that the Jedi served the Senate in practice and that peace meant order for the wealthy. He saw no ally and envoys who guarded the interest of the powerful. Afterward, Dooku and Windu secured Simich and brought him to a cell. Dooku returned to speak with him in private. He did not excuse murder, but affirmed that a people could defend their world. He urged Simich to keep his movement alive and to evolve rather than wither. With the case closed, Dooku and Windu brought Katri's body to Coruscant. The temple honored her and then committed her to a flame. After the funeral, Dooku asked Windu about the rumor that Windu was to receive Katri's council seat. Windu confirmed the offer. Dooku asked if Windu had known of the offer before they left for Raxus. Windu said he had not. He believed the council preferred him because Dooku had strayed from the mission, and a senator had died. He promised to speak on Dooku's behalf. While Dooku thanked him, he grew wary of Windu's rise in rank. Years later, council member Jor Aerith invited Dooku and his Padawan to represent the Order at the Coruscant Dragonfire Air Rally. The goal was diplomatic goodwill. Dooku and Eula Braylon voiced frustration with the council's pursuit of politics. Aerith said Dooku's presence would help since he had the gift of conversation that she lacked. Dooku agreed and turned the trip into a lesson on Candivet customs for his student. At the rally, he met his older brother Ramil, who flew in the race. Dooku questioned why the heir of Sereno risked his life in sport. Ramil brushed aside the concern and took the start. He flew well until his airspeeder failed and crashed. The wreckage bore the marks of sabotage. Dooku and his apprentice slipped from the stands and followed the trail through service corridors and hangars. An investigator tried to bury the facts and answered to a Genet crime boss named Senevax. Aerith sent a recall and ordered them back to the event. Dooku ignored the order and seized the criminal. Under questioning, Senevax revealed knowledge of council communications. Their recall had been logged in exact terms. The leak was inside the temple. Dooku summoned the temple guard and escorted Senevax to the High Council chamber, where he stated the charge of espionage. Through the Force, he felt guilt settle on Eula Braylon. As Dooku lit his lightsaber, Eula raised hers and asked if he intended to kill her. He stepped back and said he saw justice, then placed her under arrest. Investigators uncovered the leverage that Senevax held. Unbeknownst to the council, Aerith Terex was Eula's son. Blackmail had turned a Jedi Master into a tool for criminals. Dooku and Qui-Gon exposed Terex, and he was taken into custody. The council removed Eula from her seat, opening a vacancy in the council. Yoda offered the seat to Dooku, who accepted the chance to become a council member in the hopes of changing the Jedi Order from within. Qui-Gon himself eventually passed his trials to become a Jedi Knight. During that time, he took a Padawan named Obi-Wan Kenobi, who grew in skill and became a hero among the Jedi. Throughout that time, Dooku remained in contact with his former apprentice, who also achieved the rank of Master. At some point after Qui-Gon's rise as a true Jedi, Dooku took on another apprentice, but she fell to the dark side and died, becoming an embarrassment to her master. Still, Dooku kept her two red-bladed lightsabers. Years later, Dooku realized that transactions had shaped policies in the Republic as credits bent laws. He judged that the Jedi stood too near to the Senate to act freely against such corruption. It didn't take long for the distance between Dooku's conscience and the Jedi Order to grow, but the final nail in his fall was yet to be struck, and the man responsible for such happened to be the very Dark Lord who had the Republic at the palm of his hand. Chapter 7. Rise Count Dooku. Unbeknownst to Dooku and the Jedi Order, careful eyes have been watching him and his growing disillusionment with the system. Dooku's growing discontent with the Republic and its protectors was already within the scope of the secretive Sith's radar, with Darth Plagueis showing interest in him. Even before Dooku decided to take a seat in the High Council, he was already familiar with Higo Damask, a moon industrialist who was secretly Plagueis behind the shadows. This Sith Lord had studied Dooku's conduct with a patient eye and a clear sense of opportunity. Plagueis had watched Dooku since certain events in the Jedi's life revealed a brush with the dark. Dooku was also frustrated with what was happening regarding the politicking and profit-chasing senators and businessmen throughout the galaxy. But what he wasn't aware of was that it was Plagueis and his apprentice Chief Palpatine who were orchestrating the corrupt and shady dealings that frustrated Dooku. But while Plagueis was still grooming his apprentice, Darth Sidious, he viewed Dooku as a possible insurance policy if ever things were to go wrong with Palpatine's schemes as a rising politician. He also considered turning Dooku indirectly to fracture the Jedi Order. The idea lingered until Plagueis introduced Dooku to Palpatine, at the time Senator of Naboo. The introduction mattered because the rapport that grew between Dooku and Sidious would prove central to the Sith Grand Plan. Senator Palpatine sensed Dooku's disenchantment and had followed him for years. He saw the advantage having an ally with Dooku's reputation and skills. Palpatine may have been in league with Plagueis, but he had his own secret plot. Even before the Battle of Naboo in 32 BBY, he met with Dooku to test opinions and cultivate him as an ally. Dooku still acted within Jedi orthodoxy, yet his doubts widened. He flirted with the belief that the dark side could be used without personal corruption as dissatisfaction with the Order grew. Eventually, after his brother, the Count Ramil, tried to turn Serenno's population against the Republic by hiring mercenaries to forge unrest in the streets, Dooku returned to his home planet yet again, as his sister Jensa pleaded for his help. After killing his brother, he decided that Serenno was in need of him to bring back order. Due to that, Dooku decided to part ways with the Jedi Order. Not as a Dark Initiate or a Sith Lord, he simply decided his ideals were no longer in line with what the Jedi believed in, and that he was needed more on Serenno. He then assumed his place as the rightful heir to Serenno, becoming its count and inheriting his family's enormous fortune. Dooku was 60 at this point, and his departure from the Jedi Order saddened Yoda tremendously. When Dooku wanted to return his lightsaber though, Yoda wanted him to keep it, as he saw being a Jedi as more than a title or the belonging to an order. Dooku thanked his old master one last time for his guidance before parting ways. Soon thereafter, by 40 BBY, he started working in secret with Sidious, who had become a close ally in his quest to reform the Republic, as Palpatine was able to convince him of the Sith's plan to reform the Republic. For Sidious, he started to go on trips to recruit potential allies for the Sith, but he was yet to burn any bridges with the Jedi or fall entirely to the Sith's ideals, for he still adored Qui-Gon Jinn as a beloved former apprentice. It was that connection that kept him from completely falling to the dark side at that point in time. But such a connection had to be severed if the Sith wanted Dooku on their side. Chapter 8. The Fall to the Dark Side. After accepting Sidious's offer, Dooku became the quiet architect of a manufactured war. He used his access to the Jedi Temple to advance the Sith Grand Plan and to conceal each sign that might reveal it. The most important task he directed was the creation of a clone army that the Republic would one day deploy. How the Sith learned of the project remained unclear. Dooku later said that Sifo Dyas had invited his help. Dyas, who once had a vision about planet's downfall, had another vision about the Republic's own demise. He feared the Republic's turmoil and the Council's complacency, eventually ordering the Kaminoans to grow the army as a reserve in case civil war erupted. Unbeknownst to Sifo-Dyas, though, he had been deceived by the Sith and was doing their bidding. By 33 BBY, Dooku was in search of more tools for the upcoming war against the Republic. He discovered a Kaleesh warlord named Grievous, once called Kaimayan Jai Shilal. Dooku and Sidious kept an eye on him during the Kaleesh War against the Yamri of Huk. The Yamri were wealthy and technologically advanced. When the Kaleesh forced them back, the insects sought aid from the Galactic Republic. The Republic and the Jedi answered, taking the Yamri's side against the Kaleesh. Embargoes and fines followed, causing starvation to spread across Kalee. Grievous's hatred of the Republic and the Jedi hardened. The Kaleesh warrior entered the service of the intergalactic banking clan. As an enforcer, he was phenomenally successful and became one of the clan's most valuable assets and catching the eye of the Sith Lords. They saw a commander who could be reshaped and a subject for experiments that fused technology with living will. Soon after, Dooku had Grievous's shuttle sabotaged and it fell from the sky. Dooku appeared and kept the Kaleesh alive while going to Geonosis to forge their greatest weapon. He claimed to Grievous that the Jedi were responsible for the sabotage. The charge fixed Grievous's fury. He embraced Reconstruction and demanded to fight again. Under Dooku's direction, Separatist cybernetic experts and Geonosian biotechs rebuilt Grievous almost entirely. Dooku first placed in his hands a weapon that had belonged to a long-dead friend who had once been a Jedi. Then he instructed the Kaleesh in lightsaber combat and refined each motion to craft the ultimate Jedi killer. In 32 BBY, Dooku returned to the Jedi Temple and slipped into the archives. Using Sifo-Dyas' authorization, he erased Kamino from the charts and hid the cradle of the army. As he left, he noticed agitation among the Jedi and asked Jocasta knew why. She said Qui-Gon Jinn had reported contact with the Sith on Tatooine. Jinn and his Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi had gone to Naboo to negotiate with Viceroy Newt Gunray about lifting the blockade. Gunray followed Sidious's orders and tried to have them killed. The attempt failed, and the Jedi escaped with Queen Padme Amidala after an encounter with Darth Maul, a suspected Sith Lord. Dooku answered that Jinn had an active imagination, to which New reminded him that he once did as well, but he said such imagination held little value in those halls. Dooku then found Jinn walking with Master Yaddle and pressed him about the Sith. He guessed correctly that the Council did not want to believe that conclusion. The former master also said he had warned them for years about a coming darkness and that they had ignored him. Yaddle, speaking for the Council, said she did not doubt Jinn, yet saw no reason to spread alarm before they knew more. She urged caution as Dooku told Jinn to act carefully if he met a Sith again, and added that he would no longer be there to protect him. Not long after, Jinn, Kenobi, and Amidala returned to Naboo and broke the Federation invasion. Maul killed Qui-Gon in the duel that followed. During the same span, Dooku ensured that Sifo-Dyas would never speak. Using the name Tyrannus, he contacted Lom Pike of the Pike Syndicate and ordered him to murder Dyas by shooting down his shuttle during a mission. The killing closed the last mouth that knew the origin of the army, and Dooku took control of the project. News of Qui-Gon's death drew Dooku back to the Great Tree in the Temple of Coruscant. He had taken a young Jinn there many times. Yaddle approached and told him the funeral would be held on Naboo, and that the Council would attend. Dooku said he would not go because his presence would not be welcomed. She asked if he blamed the Council, to which he answered that Jinn had become one with the Force and that letting go was required. Dooku then traveled to the works to confront Sidious about the cost of his schemes. Unbeknownst to him, Yaddle had her own suspicions about Dooku. She followed him in secret and learned that the former Jedi Master had met up with the shadowy figure. During that time, Dooku accused Sidious of making him betray everything and everyone he had known. The Sith Lord answered that every act had served a greater good, and that such betrayal had been necessary. After hearing their exchange, Yaddle confronted them and urged Dooku to surrender to her and help defeat Sidious. He hesitated, but Sidious said the Jedi blindly served a corrupt Senate and ordered Dooku to prove his loyalty. Dooku ignited his blade and fought Yaddle, pressing the experienced Jedi Master back. Wanting to convince Dooku to help end the Sith once and for all, Yaddle admitted that the Council had been wrong, and told him she had stepped down. She begged him to turn back, but he did not. They crossed blades again as Yaddle retreated toward the doorway that led to her ship. Dooku mocked her for running to the council. She answered that he had run straight into evil. His anger sharpened, forcing him to hurl her into the doorframe. Dooku threw the lever and shut the heavy door down on Yaddle, believing he had killed her. As Dooku fell into anguish, Sidious lifted him with praise and called him worthy. Then Yaddle rose, summoned the last of her strength, and raised the door. However, the effort drained her as she lay at Dooku's feet to tell him that many would suffer under his scheme for order. Dooku replied that he would give her peace and killed her. Killing a Jedi Master, a powerful council member at that, completed Dooku's fall to the dark side. With Maul gone, Sidious was in need of a new apprentice. He anointed Dooku as his new follower, christening him with the name Darth Tyrannus. Dooku considered the name formidable and wore it with pride. But there were other things to do as the new master and apprentice duo needed to tear the Republic apart.